Welcome back. The Archbishop of Canterbury has used his New Year message to plead to the general public not to despair over climate change, but look towards real reasons to hope. In the message broadcast on the BBC from the Royal Botanical Gardens in Kew, the Church of England's most senior bishop said, "When it comes to climate change, it is tempting to despair, but there are real reasons to hope. People of every background are campaigning and working for justice." He also made reference to the work of the COP26 conference that was held in Glasgow in November. Well, joining me now is a columnist for The Telegraph and Spectator, David Oldroyd-Bolt. David, welcome and Happy New Year.
Hello, Andrew. Thank you and Happy New Year. And Happy Christmas. Let's not forget it's Christmas until...
Oh, yes, that as well. All of those things. So do you think the Archbishop is right to highlight the threat of climate change? Do you think this is beyond his remit?
I think it's a somewhat curious message for a cleric to be conveying, given that it is Christmas and therefore the second most important time in the Christian calendar. I'd have thought that there might be something about the declining role of religion in society and how he proposes, as the religious head of the established church, to do something about that. I also thought that the message itself, frankly, added nothing to the debate whatsoever. Talk of climate justice is a trope, I would have said, of left-wing campaigning organizations and charities, and is essentially just saying capitalism doesn't work, when that, as we know, is false. Capitalism is the only way that we are going to help those people affected by climate change, particularly in Africa, to find effective solutions. So I thought overall it was a rather skew-if and cockeyed way of going about his most effective broadcasting platform, with the exception of Easter.
Do you think it is that he is avoiding those kind of topics that you mentioned? Why do you think he's not going? Why instead is he going for these more sort of social justice causes? What would be the purpose of that?
Well, I think it's quite obvious, really, isn't it? The Church of England is now, it seems, more of a campaigning organisation for social justice causes than it is a religious body. And so he's speaking to his, what he conceives to be anyway, his core audience, which is extremely comfortable, metropolitan professionals, in London and other cities. I don't think, for instance, that he is considering, when giving this message, what actually makes up the body of the Church of England, which is those people around the country who go there to hear about God and the Gospels and the revelations of Jesus. But this is entirely typical of Welby's archiepiscopacy. He is speaking to a perceived audience rather than the actual audience he has, and in doing so, I think is just putting another nail in the coffin of the established church.
Is there no role whatsoever for politics within religion, or for religious figures to express political views? I mean, arguably, you could say that the message of Jesus is arguably an anti-capitalist message, insofar as he says it's impossible for a rich man to enter the kingdom of heaven. So is there not, and we saw that with the Occupy Wall Street protests, we saw religious figures coming out in support of them. That's a while ago now, but is there any room for that at all, do you think?
I think there's certainly room for politics within religion, and there's certainly a place for the Archbishop of Canterbury in the political discussion that the nation has. However, he seems to have an unerring knack of picking precisely those political issues which are going to annoy people, or rather to pick political positions which are going to annoy people and which add nothing to the debate, which many politicians are already talking about, which many journalists and commentators have already elucidated. So I encourage the Archbishop of Canterbury to make his political case, but I would encourage him also to do it in a more imaginative and more intelligent way, frankly. And yes, there are, of course, people in all churches who say that, or rather in all Christian churches, who say that Jesus was anti-capitalist. But I think that to take one specific saying and to over-elaborate it, after all, as Margaret Thatcher was fond of saying, the Good Samaritan couldn't have been a Good Samaritan had he not made some money first.
So do you think, when we're talking about someone like the Archbishop, it's kind of difficult to know who he's speaking for, isn't it? It's difficult to know whether he's talking on an individual basis, if he's speaking for God, if he's speaking for his congregations. Do you think this creates added complication when he makes these kind of statements?
Oh, I think it's obvious who he's speaking for. He's speaking for the overwhelming body of opinion of the clerisy of the Church of England, which is very, very different from the overwhelming body of opinion of the congregation of the Church of England. As anybody who pays even the slightest attention will know, they are far to the left of the body of opinion of the congregations on matters of economics and on matters of things like social justice. I've never, ever, although I'm a Catholic convert, I spent 25 years as an Anglican. I never, ever heard anyone in the congregation worry about social justice. I heard a great many clerics worry about social justice, because actually the living revelation of the Gospels is what people go to church to partake of. And they do that in their own way, in their own communities, in their own homes, in their own witness to God. I don't think that they need someone like Archbishop Welby standing there reminding them of this. And I think he's got a fundamental problem, which doesn't just face Anglicans, but is, I think, brought into the highest degree of definition with Anglicanism in this country, in that it's by trying to tack onto the fashionable political causes of the day, it's lost something of its real religious message. And to go back to that is a very difficult, you might say, PR exercise, to which he's clearly not up.
David Oldroyd-Bolt, thank you so much for joining me today on GB News Live. I want to come to my panel now because I find this fascinating.